Hello there. The Tenari Desert, which extends from the modern countries of Niger into Chad, is part of the larger and much more famous Sahara Desert. And in fact, it's one of the most dangerous and inhospitable places in an already famously dangerous place. Even in relation to the rest of the Sahara, this place has almost no plant life. It's so dry and it's so arid. And July temperatures here can reach as high as 108 degrees Fahrenheit or 42 degrees Celsius. And the vast expanses of sand dunes are also met with long fields of just gravelly plains. And the whole desert too is subjected to strong eastern and northeasterly winds that just tear through here. And altogether it is a really, really difficult place to imagine anyone living for any amount of time, even with the height of modern technology at one's disposal. But 12,000 years ago, the Tenari Desert, and in fact all of the Sahara, would have been an incredibly different landscape. Due to climatic changes that we'll get into later, this whole area experienced huge amounts of rainfall compared to today, creating what historians have dubbed the Green Sahara. And from one side of Africa to the other, literally from Egypt to Mauritania, this previously parched landscape became filled with shallow lakes and forest and jungle. And accordingly, many different animals started to make their home here too. They found evidence of elephants, giraffes, hartebeests, warthogs, pythons, and many others. And the lakes were full of fish. Nile perch were there, as well as small catfish and others. And actually 12,000 years ago, the Sahara was a beautiful and bountiful region just filled with animal and bird and fish life. And also, of course, people. Across different places in the Sahara, evidence has been found of intrepid humans making their home in this region for thousands and thousands of years. And one of the people that we're going to be getting to know today, the Kifians, were here well over 10,000 years ago. And looking back at our little spot again, that spot that would one day become that inhospitable Tenari Desert, well, way back when, there was a beautiful lake here, and a beautiful little community. One that would remain undiscovered beneath the sands until the year 2000, when a paleontologist actually was out here looking for dinosaur bones. Instead, he stumbled across an ancient human settlement. But I don't think that term settlement really does this place any justice. Because as the paleontologist and the others that came after him would soon discover, this place was home to not just one, but two ancient cultures of the ancient Green Sahara. One you've heard of already, the Kifians, but also another. And not only that, but though they did not live here, these two different cultures, at the same time, the second one at least does seem to have been aware of the earlier presence of the first. And also when you step back and look at the timeline of just how long altogether both of these groups of people were living here. Altogether, people lived in this one little spot for well over 5,000 years. And they didn't find just evidence of their lives either, but also of their deaths. But we'll get into all that, and we'll get into why this site is so fascinating and what we know of these brilliant ancient people. But first, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Lost Bits. My name is Marie. It's lovely to see you. And I'm so excited to share a little bit of the history of you of Gobero and the ancient lost people of the Green Sahara. There's so much to unpack here, and this is going to be our first trip to Africa. I'm so excited. I've been fascinated with people that may have lived in the Sahara ever since I first saw images of some of their beautiful rock art that you might have seen too from time to time. It's just fascinating to imagine people here and how different their world would have been from ours. And I'm so excited to visit a different continent and two different groups of people. This will be so much fun, and to get a chance too to learn about such a unique part of our past. This is so wonderful. We need some African bits. Come on. Now, as I said, the landscape of Gobero at this time would have been incredibly different, and where they find the evidence of habitation would have been along the side of an ancient lake. And when the Kifian people arrived here 10,000 years ago, they would have found everything they needed. They were the first that we know of to have lived in this exact spot. And also it's them that first started burying their dead here. And it's from both of these types of ancient artifacts and remains that we're able to learn a little bit more about these ancient people's lives. The Kifians seem to be mostly migratory hunter-gatherers, though the migratory part did stop and they did settle down once they got to Gobero. One thing unique about the Kifians is that they could be quite tall, reaching as high as 6 feet, And from studying their remains too, they've been able to tell that these people had a rich, protein-filled diet and were quite muscular in general. Year-round habitation probably started to occur as it really got into the wet period of the Sahara, around 7,700 BCE. And it's around this time too that we see the first burials from them take place. The bodies we see left from them are tightly bound, suggesting they may have been wrapped, actually as we talked about recently in a Claude Helin episode. And while parts of their funerary practice are still being learned by us today, it's obviously clear they took great care of their dead. These early Kiphian graves are now part of the oldest known cemetery, the cemetery here at Gobero, found anywhere in the Sahara. While the graves of the Kiphians don't often display grave goods as we would think of them, they have recovered other artifacts too that give us more hints at their lifestyle, like barbed harpoons that seem to have been used to catch fish, as well as ceramic and pottery shards. But I'm very sorry to say that a lot of this ancient beautiful culture is still a mystery to us. Because unfortunately around 6,200 BCE, a period of drought hit this region for an incredibly long time, lasting as much as a millennium. At that point, the Kiphians seem to have been forced to leave their home, and there's no sign of them ever being able to return. And the Kiphians as a whole disappear from the archaeological record as a whole around this time too. But eventually, this wasn't, the end of the Green Sahara. The drought kind of moved on. And by that point, the Kiphian were gone, but a new culture came in, known as the Tenarians. Now, these Tenarians seem to have been of different biological origin than the Kiphians, though there's still some argument among anthropologists that think they might be a descendant of the Kiphians. Their DNA analysis shows that they came from different regions of the continent. These new people, the Tenarians, seem to have even looked a little bit different than the Kiphians had, being shorter and lighter statured in general. They also had some other differences, and though they did practice hunting and fishing, they were also cattle herders. And they would too start living at Gobero once it got a little more wet again. And they even started using the very same cemetery that the Kiphians had used. But perhaps touchingly, they seem to have taken great care to not disturb the older Kiphian graves in any way. In fact, none of the Kiphian graves were harmed or touched or looted. The later Tenarians seem to have respectfully and carefully kind of worked around them. And while the Kiphian graves had very little by way of grave goods, the Tenarians were the complete opposite, and their graves are some of the most distinctive and unusual and beautiful found anywhere in the ancient world. They often include jewelry and the bodies being left in ritual poses. There's been the body of a young girl recovered, for example, that is wearing an upper arm bracelet carved from a hippo tusk. There was another man who was buried that was seated in a mud turtle's shell. And there is another burial that actually shows a young woman buried with two children that are believed to be hers. And they're posed as if reaching towards each other to embrace each other. Not only that, but beneath the bodies and all around them, they found the evidence of large amounts of pollen. They think that the bodies of this woman and her children were literally laid down on a bed of flowers. You can see an image of this here. It's beautiful, even as it's kind of heartbreaking. And it's clear, again, even if they're doing it in a different way, they're showing so much love and care for their dead. And these Tenarian people, would live here themselves for thousands of years, arriving and settling permanently around 5,200 BCE and staying permanently until 2,500 BCE. And even at that point, they didn't leave right away. Because the thing is, that's around the time when that greening of the Sahara starts to go away. And for a long time, scientists debated what caused the Sahara to become a desert. Some even argued it could have been related to the people living there, but now we know it was a little bit different, and actually everything that happened was completely outside of their control. It's since been proven by scientists that this greening of the Sahara is caused by a cyclical wobble, basically, of the Earth's orbit, roughly every 21,000 years. Just due to how the Earth moves in its orbit around the Sun, the position of the Sahara on the planet and its relation to the Sun literally changes. So it doesn't get as much direct heat as it normally would, and so you get these periods of temporary greening. But eventually the desert does always come back. And unfortunately, around 5,200 BCE, that's exactly what happened. It wouldn't have been right away. And in fact, we know that the people continued living here for quite some time after it would have slowly started to get drier and hotter, and the water and the animals would have slowly started going away. And eventually, even though they would have lived there now for literally millennia, the people would have just had to start moving too. And around 4,000 years ago, it would have been clear that this desertification was not some sort of temporary drought. Writing for the Journal of African Archaeology, Elena A. Garcia puts it somewhat tragically and bluntly. Quote, "After about 4,000 years ago, the recurrence of these alternating climatic events gradually came to an end. Desertification became an irreversible process, and the Sahara-Sahel border progressively moved southwards. Consequently, Gobero lost its role as a favorable location. It first became an occasional transient station, and then turned into a no-return frontier for its occupants." End quote. And I have to just stop here and say, wow. Like I talked earlier about not knowing what it would have felt like for the Kithians, but especially for the Tenarians, I can't imagine. I just can't. They had seen this people had been there before them, even if they didn't know their name. And I should say these names, Kithian, Tenarian, these are all modern terms. We don't know what their names were either. But they would have known there were these people there before. And they were gone. And now they were being forced to leave too. And it wasn't even because of invaders or of them over-exploiting the land or of anything else, anything inside of anyone's control. Just for no reason why literally the world would have seemed like it had turned against them. And as you now know, in a very real and literal way, it kind of had. Did they think it was their fault? Did they think they had done something wrong? You know, you hear stories of that like in different cultures all over the world in ancient days, since they didn't know about things like orbital wobbles. If something went wrong, if there was a natural disaster, they could blame themselves or people in their community. And I hope, oh my goodness, I hope that wasn't the case. Did knowing that the Kithians had been there before help them in some way? Maybe knowing that there had been other people before would have made it feel better. Maybe they thought someday they were going to come back. But unfortunately, as you guys probably are well aware, the Sahara has not had a greening like this since. These Tenarians, when they left this place, they were the last humans that we know of to be able to make a home here. And while yes, I know, people have managed to find ways to craftily make a living by traveling across the Sahara for millennia. I know that with modern technology today, we can basically live anywhere. But to live in the Sahara as it was, to see it in that way, to see the Green Sahara and the world it used to be, it truly did. It ended with them. It wasn't just a point of no return for them. It was kind of the point of no return for all of us. And the Tenarians would be the last ones to see that wonderful lost world with their own eyes. But at least they've left us an incredible amount to learn from. What do you guys think? Where are your minds at? I admit, until researching this episode, I didn't know that humans had lived so long in the Green Sahara. It makes me wonder if there's other older settlements out there. Like Gobero is the oldest one and the longest inhabited one, but there's just still so much we don't know about this place, about this time. And what do you think about other ancient, maybe animals that could have just lived in the Green Sahara, that could have been specialists maybe? I keep thinking about that too. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Guys, thank you again so much for being here for the story of Gobero and the lost people of the Green Sahara. And please, as always, don't let my words be the last words you hear on the topic. You'll find a link to my source list pinned to the top comment below, but please don't stop there. And you know, your local library might have a book on the history of the Sahara, or it might have a book on some other part of cool African history, or just any cool part of history. Any and all. You can always find something about history at the library. Just go, you'll find something cool, you're bound to. Oh, you'll have so much fun. And when you get back, let me know how you made out. I also wanted to say too, guys, thank you. Over the course of me making this episode, we hit 500 subscribers on the channel. I'm so grateful and I'm so flattered. I can't wait to share more stories of the unusual and mysterious parts of our past together. And to say thank you, I planned a couple surprises for you. People who keep an eye on my channel will notice over the next few days that a couple unusual videos will drop. And the first is Lost Bits Mega Pack 1. I've been meaning to put together another compilation for you guys. Actually, this will be like my first proper compilation. To say thank you and to reminisce over some of the fun we've had already, I've brought together all 5 episodes of Lost Bits that have been aired so far here on the channel ever since it's been revamped into its own series. We've got everything from Thorin and Company all the way up to the last episode, Clahalan. but I know some of those are really recent, so I've recorded 3 completely new, unheard stories that have never been on my channel before to include in it as well. So altogether, there will be 8 unusual and mysterious tales from our past in this first ever Lost Bits Mega Pack! And the 3 new stories include will be Vrabel, Mass Grave from the End of an Age, Skeleton Lake, Mystery of Ice and Bone, and Stones from the Heart, Mysterious Circles from Norway's Ancient Past. Now, if you're the kind of person that doesn't have time to watch the whole Mega Pack long video, then don't worry about it. Eventually I will be releasing these as standalone episodes, but I wanted to include it here for now because, well, I gotta celebrate a little bit. Guys, again, thank you. This is so nice. And I know it's been a little while too since we've had a longer video with me doing the monthly longer ones now. And moving forward in the future, at the end of every month, I'll do a compilation with this, with a couple new episodes always thrown in too. And to give you an update on Lost Realms 2, the newest episode in my revamped Lost Realms series, where I do deep dives into darker and more complicated issues from our past, will be coming out later this week too. And I hope that you like it. This month's episode is Herxheim, a delicate history of exocannibalism. And I know it's a complicated topic and kind of a fraught one, but I think if we do our best to look at it with a level head, then it's one that we can learn a lot from and can be really fascinating and helpful. So if any of this sounds like your thing, then be sure to keep an eye out, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon. But either way, thank you again so much for being here. Be safe, be happy, go with all my love. Until next time, goodbye.